and welcome to the Destiny IT Pros podcast, brought to you by Frontpoint-IT, www.frontpoint-it.com, we're Utah's premier managed service provider, providing virtual IT services and IT outsourcing. So we are huge fans of the video game Destiny here, where our primary platform is Xbox One. Of course, most of the stuff applies to PlayStation 4 as well, and PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. This week, we are going to be talking about Destiny, Taken King, and kind of like the Red Bull quests and things.
I am Dan Stanford.
And I am Jeremy Wright. So let's get right into it. Dan, what do you think of the whole Red Bull quest to get the focus light, and what do you think the quests are going to be in the Taken King?
I think there's some people that have had some beef with the Red Bull, basically where you buy something in real life in order to get a bonus in the game itself. Frankly, I don't have a problem with it. I think the Red Bull partnership with Destiny, kind of the gamers and the Red Bull kind of fit, and I think they both realize that. And I mean, heck, it's a few dollars, and it is a really nice XP perk. And in order to unlock the, isn't it a story mission or a quest? It's a story mission in Taken King. That seems fine to me. Honestly, it'll probably be like in the House of Wolves, the one where the Fogoth one that you do in reverse. It's got the turret and all that sort of stuff. My hunch is it probably won't be that big of a deal. I mean, it'd be cool to do. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I don't think people are going to be out there really ticked off that they didn't get it.
Isn't it kind of like buying XP though? That's how it feels to me. You're just buying XP, which feels like a free-to-play game or a mobile game, except we already paid money to play this
game. I can definitely see that. I think as long as they kept it a rare thing, if in a month we get another one and now you got Twinkies or something like that, unlock a strike or something like that, that might get real fast. So if they did something like this maybe once a year, I give them a pass on it. I'm fine with it.
Regardless of how I feel about it, I'm definitely going to take advantage of it. That's for sure.
Yes.
What do you think is the best way to go about using the Focus Light? Focus Light, for those of you that don't know, is a consumable that gives you a 50% XP boost for a period of 30 minutes.
I used the first one just last night, and it was awesome. It was completely epic. We did a little bit of talking, off camera about it, and I think the best way to do it is go out there, get those bounties, because each bounty you get a big XP boost along with it. And I stacked up a bunch of bounties. I think I stacked up somewhere around 6 or 7 bounties, and then used the consumable right before I went to Petra and the little robot bounty dude, whatever the heck his name is, Xander 99. And I also swapped out my gear, some stuff that I wanted to ascend and some weapons that I wanted to ascend. And I think I unlocked somewhere around 8 or 9 new options on the gear and the weapons. My Gallahorn, I unlocked 2. So I only have 2 left to have that thing fully ascended in one night. I was able to pull all that off. I think I played for about an hour. It's pretty awesome.
Aside from leveling up gear, you could also use it to level up in secondary characters. So away from your primary character, if you haven't started your second or third characters, I would recommend doing that and then potentially using one of the focused XPs to help you get that up to light level 20 really quickly. They only last 30 minutes, so they're not too bad. However, I was thinking about trying to figure it out, and it took me about a week to get my characters up to level 20, playing casually, so a few hours a day here and there, not playing nonstop. You could probably do it in 1 day or so. So you could probably do it in about 2 days with a Focus Light, assuming that you could use it the whole time. So if you have 24 Red Bulls, and you have the Focus Light from those, that gives you 12 hours straight of 50% XP.
Well, I think you still have to be careful. You mentioned earlier that it seems to be that when you kill a bad guy, a monster, whatever, you get approximately 1 experience point per kill. So it's pretty inefficient that way. You've got to do the bounties. You've got to do the story missions. The one thing that I realized last night when I went over to Xander, the robot bounty guy, is his bounties, a lot of them are 5,000 experience points. And if you've got a fully, level 30 plus character, a lot of those are just story missions that are heroic. And some of those heroics are only like level 12, the low 20s, etc. They're pretty easy. Yeah. And you get, the 5,000 experience plus the 50%, you get 7,500 experience just like that. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm going to be doing the next couple of days. I'm just going to bypass on Petra, and I've got her, I think I'm level 4 now, and just work on Xander and just go nuts and just get those big experience points and just get some of my gear ascended.
Are you going to work on a secondary character or just?
Yes. I think I'm finally. I play a warlock and level 34, and that's all I've got. But as I think about this, I think about Destiny and their plan on how big of a scale this monster is going to be. Imagine a year or two from now starting the character from scratch, in order to get it up to level 48 or 52 at the time or something like that. Now it seems to be is the time to get these guys going.
Well, yes and no. If you think about it, if you started right now, in order to get to level 32, all you have to do is purchase gear from a vendor.
Yeah, but you at least got to, you at least got to get them up to 20, and then you could use any gear you wanted.
Yeah, so perhaps going forward, the base level of the gear is available from like the Vanguard or from Dead Orbit, Future War, Cult, or New Monarchy. The base will be 42 instead of 32. But which brings me to my next question of how much is a character actually worth
in the real world?
Correct. Yeah, talking about buying XP. So how much is a character worth? I have some figures on this. I've done some math.
Chances are, if you were to look at like World of Warcraft or Diablo, because they're kind of in that same RPG type vein, with leveling and stuff like that, I bet you there's some metrics out there that people have paid for characters in that. I guess the other catch too is you can't necessarily transfer it, so you would have to sell your Xbox account,
right? The
entire account itself.
So hypothetically, if you were to create an Xbox account just for this purpose,
okay.
So there's actually in the Destiny application, you can see how many hours you've spent working on your character. So I looked at my hunter, who's level 34, has been for some time. So we got interrupted there for a second, so this is going to be a little bit off from where we were. But I was talking about my hunter, who's level 34, and we're talking about how much a character is worth. So if you look in the Destiny application, you can see how many hours you've spent on your characters. So I have 10 days of time into my character total, which is somewhere around 240 hours. Now, granted, that wasn't to get just to level 34. That was to get to 34 and then some, and then also time messing around, etc. So if you really do the math on that, if you wanted to make a profit on that, what would you be at? Like $12 an hour or something?
Oh, goodness.
It'd be about $2,880. So that's for one character. Plus, the Xbox Live comes with the account. So that's $70 for that. So what would you do, like a package deal?
Plus the game. Yeah, because all the DLCs and stuff like that are tied to the account. I mean, I think you could easily be knocking on $3,000 at the low end, frankly. But then it just begs the question, who would pay that?
If anybody wants to pay $3,000 for 3 level 34 characters, shoot me an email. You got yourself a deal. I will spend the time and get you there. It was just an interesting point that I thought of. A lot of, I don't know if that's popular. I don't think it's popular in Destiny at all.
I've never heard of it, but
player-to-player trading. You can't do, that kind of thing. So if you get like a 34 with a bunch of exotic gear, I don't know. That's just kind of an interesting thing to think about. Who buys that?
Which I actually really enjoy about Destiny. When I first started playing it and realized that you could not trade gear, at first I kind of thought, hold on, wait a minute. But then in retrospect, as I look back at, say, Diablo and stuff like that really allowed that. And they even had their marketplace so you could sell your gear for real money, etc. and how they eventually pulled it because it was ruining the game. I think Destiny's dead on this. I do not think they should allow any trading of gear or any of that. I mean, you've got to earn it the old-fashioned way.
Speaking of gear, though, in The Taken King, the new DLC coming out September 15th, what do you think it needs in terms of gear in order to make it both a commercial success for Bungie, which they need, and then also be successful in the eyes of the players and the fan base of Destiny?
I think two big points. One, there needs to be some gear out there that is just epic. I mean, there needs to be something along the lines of Galahorn or the Vex Mythoclast, Red Death, something in that vein. And it doesn't even have to necessarily be exotic, but really, honestly, I think maybe it ought to be because, House of Wolves, Crota's End and all that, they had some pretty cool gear, some stuff, but nothing on the level of, Galahorn and that, where people are just dying to get their hands on that particular weapon. I think that they need some gear like that. And it doesn't need to be better than Galahorn. I mean, it needs to be on the same level type thing. And it could be a primary weapon or, not necessarily heavy, but just something that people are like, holy cow, this gun is just the bomb. And I think that's been badly missing in all the DLCs.
I agree with you on that. The Galahorn, I think what's interesting about the Galahorn to me is the legend that has been built around the Galahorn, not by Bungie themselves, but by the community. And I oftentimes flip-flop as to whether or not Bungie recognized that at the beginning and have played to that by turning down the loot tables maybe and turning the percentage down on Galahorn, etc., or whether it's still the way the game is played. Do you think that Bungie was like, holy crap, people are obsessed with this gun, let's give it some perks that nobody knows about, let's make it drop less often? Is that a possibility? But at the same time, what I'm getting at is I think Galahorn's lonely at the top. I think it's lonely up there. It needs some friends.
Yes.
It should still be relevant by all means. Anybody who has one, who wants one, I think it should be relevant. However, I think the reason that we have exotics that suck, some of them are terrible. I think the reason that we have those...
No Land Beyond?
Yeah, No Land Beyond. Super good Vice Machine Gun. Some people, they have their fans, though. They do have their fans.
Universal Handshake?
Universal Remote, yeah.
Universal Remote, yeah.
I think that the reason they have those is because if every exotic was some game-changing piece of gear...
Correct.
Then it would ruin the game. You have to have the terrible exotics because you need something to drop in the meantime. You need to have that loot table full of stuff, and it can't all be amazing gear. Otherwise, there's no grind. There's no psychological need to play the game to find that gear, which is something that Bungie plays to a lot.
Agreed. Galahorn is a new weapon to me. I'm still working on ascending it. And, I mean, just last night I was dinking around with it, and a dropship came in, dropped a bunch of guys, and I just thought, this ought to be funny. So I hopped in the air, fired off one Galahorn, killed them all. Like 10 guys. And just kind of went, that's a pretty cool thing.
I don't think that Galahorn makes a great player, though. I think if you have a terrible player with the Galahorn, you have just that, a terrible player with the Galahorn. In the right hands, any weapon in the game really can be deadly. Some are just easier to use than others. But the Taken King really needs some loot to lust over. We need not just weapons, though, gear for the characters. I think they've missed the mark on a lot of the gear for the characters over and over and over again. The perks where regenning your super or using your super regens your health automatically. I think that should have been a base perk of the super to begin with. It's a super. You should automatically regenerate your health when you activate your super anyways, regardless of what gear you have. But that's a really weak perk for the tree on a piece of gear, I think.
Yeah, and the House of Wolves, they talked about the Warlocks getting some of the best gear in that, and it's definitely nice, but at the same time, it's still not on the caliber of the other gear. And honestly, some of the base gear that came out in the game that, you just need some etheric light to kick it up. I think Bungie's doing it just fine in the way that they're making the game more difficult. And that's, using levels and then using situations, like Prison of Elders and raids and stuff like that. You talked about, you don't necessarily need a better gun than Gjallarhorn, because if they do that, then the bad guys have got to get better also. And that I don't think is the way to run the game. I think doing it through levels and doing it through strikes and raids and all that is the better approach. The Taken King, my other point that they need to work on is the story. It's time to progress the story. I mean, Crota's End and Eris and her babbling and her whining on about crazy stuff, and then the House of Wolves with Petra and hunting down Skolas and all that. To me, those were very minor progressions in the story. It's time to really get back to the original story that was going on in the original game, the proper game itself. I mean, some huge questions are the stranger exo girl that hands you the weapon and it shows up and talks about, you can't believe the amount of things that are out there, and your character asks her, whether or not she's a guardian, and she says that she's not. What is she? What is that about? Even something as silly as Xur and the Agent of Nine. What is an Agent of Nine? There's a huge potential of story here that's going on that the DLCs haven't moved forward, and I would really like to see that in the Taken King. Some progression on the original storyline.
With that, though, one of the points that we've maintained across all the people complaining about the lack of a story is remember that Bungie has a 10-year game on their hands. True. And 10 years from now, 9 years now, we're going to look back and we're going to say, it all makes sense now going forward. However, I think that The Dark Below and House of Wolves did progress this story, but I'm not buying the story is my problem. I don't feel like there's enough background information there. Like, I get that Crota's a bad guy. Why? What? I get, that's what I'm not understanding, is we're not having a lot of the backstory. Like, yeah, you got to go kill this guy. Fantastic. I understand that, because that's the point of the game, just killing stuff. But why are we doing this? What did Crota do? Eris kind of talks about how there were 6 of them and they went onto the moon and they did this. Who, what are these things that are happening? I'd like to see some more cinematics. Give us some. They have this really rich world that they've built and thought out of something. Give us some cinematics of it. Give us something to hold on to and something to fight for. Almost, it seems like.
Speaking of Crota, I do have to point out some of the weird potential inconsistencies in his storyline. I mean, just last night I did the story mode and it was Crota's sword that you go and get, but clearly when you take on Crota in the raid, he has a sword. Yeah. And then he has sword bearers, and he has multiple swords coming out here and there, and then, Crota's soul, you go and you take on his soul. And I guess I can get that Crota doesn't have a soul at that point, but there seems to be a little bit, and perhaps a little bit of storytelling, that Bungie would help with that, explain, well, his sword is, made out of light, if you will, and that's how it can be in multiple places and be recreated, stuff like that.
I think the sword is more of an ephemeral thing where it was kind of, because it was filled with the light of the guardians that it had killed. That was part of it. But you're right, we do destroy it, and then we destroy his soul. And okay, so we did that. Oh, there he is again. Now he has a sword, and he has a soul, and an oversoul somehow.
Yes.
All of these things.
Yeah, great. Well, another thing with, if I might, with the Taken King is some more, another race of bad guys to work on. And I understand that in the Taken King, there's this Taken race. Mm-hmm. Just watching the little trailer for the Taken King, and that it appears to me that they are the same bad guys, just a little bit jazzed up. It looked like they were Cabal and Fallen and Vex and stuff like that, where like Oryx is, somehow altering them a little bit. But I guess what I'm saying is let's have a whole new race of bad guys, and maybe that's Destiny 2.0.
Perhaps. Yeah, I think I agree with you on that. I think that they're just Oryx's little minions that he's possessed and brainwashed, and they probably have some other abilities, would be my guess, with their new demonized, possessed, whatever powers, I would assume. And they have some crazy armor. Like one of the bosses, it looks like, is like a Cabal dude with like wings and like rocket launchers on his wings or something crazy like that, if you remember from the video. So they're going to have that kind of stuff to make it more challenging. But I agree that we need some type of new enemy to fight, some new alien race. Because that was what was cool when the very beginning of the game, you wake up and you're on Earth as it is, and it's very dystopic. It's very, post-apocalyptic. And there's these aliens on Earth. And you're running from them, which tells you there's more of them than you, and there's a problem here. And I really like that at the very beginning. But then it kind of goes away. Like, oh, now you can go back and forth between the Earth and the Moon and the Tower, and these bad guys are kind of always just sitting around there. Like, they're always just hanging out there, and the ships are coming in, and you're free to pass as you want to. That kind of took away some of the fear that I had when you first started the game and you're running from the bad guys. Which I get, because you're building your legend. It's not just a legend that the Tower is telling, but it's a legend that the bad guys are telling themselves. It's the legend that's being told of your guardian throughout the solar system and throughout the galaxy of taking out the darkness type thing. I understand that, but the story leaves much to be desired. However, I am holding out hope, because this is a 10-year game, and Bungie is one of the only studios that has made games that can be played 10 years later and still hold up. An example, the Halo series, more than anything, really is what comes to mind. But they can do that, so I do have hope that over the next 9 years we're going to see further development in the story of what I want to see.
I think if anybody can do it, it's Bungie. Yeah. I mean, they have, again, with, like you said, with the Halo, they've set that precedence that they can do it. And I too think have faith that they can pull this off. But I think it's time to start releasing a little bit more of that storyline. Let's give us a little bit more background, about the Traveler and all those sorts of good, the big bad guys. I mean, Oryx and Crota and the Stranger, all that sort of good stuff.
And I think Grimoire cards are the wrong way to tell that story, by the way. How many people actually log in and look at the Grimoire cards and read them? I want to see a timeline. I want to see something. I don't care if I have to. I want something in my hand that I can look at and read about the history of the Golden Age and read about the history of the fall and all that kind of stuff. I want to know what happened. And yeah, I think they can do it. I just think that they're doing it the wrong way right now. But they have been listening to everybody, and they have been changing. They've made some big changes in the game based off of feedback from the community of people that play Destiny. So going forward, I think we're going to see more of that. And I think that's definitely a good thing.
Agreed. Especially with the etheric light, the Ascend gear, so you can keep some of that old gear around, and you're not constantly just picking up new gear, redoing your builds of your guy, all that sort of stuff. But along with that storyline, there's an Art of Destiny book, and there are some, you can pick it up on Amazon and stuff like that. There's some drawings and paintings in there of things that we have not seen in the game. And maybe it was just conceptual, maybe it'll never come to be, or maybe it's hints at the future. I don't know.
Well, if you also look at the trailer from E3 of, I believe, last year or the year before, the game is different. And a lot of that was because Bungie actually switched. They had the main story writer leave right before the release of Destiny, or before they were ready to go into production. So they had to actually change the person who was writing the story. And so they talk about how a lot of it was concept pieces, and like this was because in one of the trailers, there's some dude who's wearing like a big fur coat type thing, really what's the word I'm looking for? A really noble, royal type character.
Yeah, a fallen guy.
No, he's a human guy, but he has like fallen stuff.
Oh.
And they were saying that was a concept of like this really regal, that's what I was looking for. This regal warrior type thing, space warrior type items what they were looking for. And I think a lot of that's changed when they switched with the writer and they switched with who was writing the story. So if that's true, I think we're going to see some of and a lot of the concept art is just that concept art of these were ideas that we had, we didn't use them for this reason, etc. But I think that I have hope that it's going to pull through.
I'm pretty excited about it. I'm definitely looking forward to it, and not the new raid and all the new story missions and
then we get new subclasses
gear and all the new subclasses. We finally get to fill out the final element, so that each class has all three of the elements in their subclasses. It'll be a lot of Destiny playing going on.
And then you do get the new raid and then 2 new strikes, right? I believe.
Correct.
I'm assuming the raid is going to be Oryx, who's going to be the boss.
Yeah.
Which is Crota's father. What is his mother doing is part of my question. But Oryx looks really good, I thought. You see he has like the big wings and he's very gargoyle monster-like.
Yeah.
Which, I think he looks like the ultimate hive boss. Because Crota just looks kind of like a big knight.
Like a big skeleton knight.
Yeah, exactly. But Oryx looks like an entirely different monster, which I think is really cool. That's just...
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's about it for this week on the Destiny IT Pros podcast. Thanks for checking it out, guys. Remember, this podcast is brought to you by Frontpoint-IT. That's www.frontpoint-IT.com, Utah's premier managed service provider. Feel free to contact us on the website if you have any questions about that. But thanks for checking it out, guys. Have a great day.
Have a good day.